Esports, going up against Salty Potatoes. Now, this is somewhat of a grudge match at this point. We saw them go head-to-head last weekend. It was a 2-1 scoreline, but we've seen them a lot over the course of the last couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, go all the way back to the challenge battles, mid-season challenge battles of last season. These two teams first met there. They met again the very first week of Salty Potatoes being in the Vainglory8, and the combined record of these two teams, 4-3 in favor of G2. So they have been extremely close in their matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at the roster for Salty Potatoes to start things off. Class, Sneaky, and the Joker. Curious to see how this one's going to play out. Obviously, this was a team that came out of the challenge battles with a lot of hype behind them. It definitely felt like they were a big fish when it came to the challenge battles pond. But now that they're out in the ocean, we have to see whether they're going to sink or swim.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very interesting match because this is a team that's still sort of experimenting with their lineup a little bit on the side of Salty Potatoes. The one constant has been Sneaky sticking around, though, and he is so important for this team to be able to do what they want to do.
All right, well, KESTREL and Joker are going to be subbed out on this one, so both substitutes are going to be stepping in. I'm going to be curious to see how this Salty Potatoes roster is going to be able to function with only one of its main roster members coming on into the field.
Yeah, I'm curious to why they're making this substitution, whether it's they're trying to catch their opponents off guard and try to bring in something new that no one has seen before. How their draft is going to change and how their strategies are going to change is going to have a big impact on whether they win or lose.
Yeah, it certainly is. One team that we know the strategies well for is going to be G2 Esports coming on into this one. Keanu Nakoa, Dog Potato, and then the linchpin of the team is obviously going to be Hundor.
Yeah, this is a team that, again, going all the way back to last season, they finished off the summer season with a victory. They showed up at the Unified Live Championship, didn't get the result they wanted, but they still looked strong in their matchups, and obviously now going to be looking to try and get back to the top of the table once again.
I mean, and they're playing really impressive. I don't doubt that they can get back to that top of the table. They did tell us they changed quite a bit in terms of their practice schedule, their practice sessions, and it's already showing. I'm really impressed with how G2 has been performing and preparing with their strategies and drafts. I would really like to see them keep it up and take it to another notch to take games even off of SK.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that honestly this season to me seems like their return to form, and maybe their return to the top spot in Europe. That's what we knew them as before. It's time to see whether they can regain that legacy for themselves. But the player to watch for this game is going to be Sneaky, and this is for two reasons. First of all, he's going up against Hundor. We know how great of a player Hundor is, so we have to see Sneaky step up to match him. But also, he's the one member from this team that's kind of consistent from the roster.
Yeah, and the fact that there's two subs playing around him just puts even more pressure on his shoulders to perform. Obviously, you know, you want the substitutes to be able to step up and make an impact for this team, but you need to start with the one player that is that consistent, the sort of rock of this team. He really needs to have a big day today.
And Sneaky is a player that when he started playing in the European side of ranked matches and when he first started competitively, he had amazing impressions on both Leon, who we know is an incredible player, and Team Secret. I think this is where his competitive career started as a sub for Team Secret. So this is a player that has proved himself to the best players in Europe, and now he's looking to prove himself to the rest of the world now on this competitive level.
Yeah, and we'll see if he's going to be able to do that here on the Vainglory8. It's time to get on into this first one and start to talk about the draft. Now, I want to focus a little bit on G2 here in this conversation because we've seen G2 loves to run these compositions where they protect Hundor and he plays the hard carry. But yesterday, we've also seen them playing much more aggressively, kind of changing up their styles. Is this a sign of things to come?
I hope so. Like, it's so good to see this team being able to play different styles because we have known them for so long as just a protect the Hundor type team, and it was when they tried to branch out into these other styles, they didn't have that same level of success. So I'm really glad that they're still sticking to trying to get different styles into their repertoire, but the fact that they're finally getting some success with them can be huge.
Especially success against a team like Fnatic yesterday. Let's take a look at this draft. Celeste going to be the first man from Salty Potatoes. Do not want Hundor to get his hands on that one. It's going to be Catherine and Grace locked on in.
And with the Celeste ban, that actually also takes some of the priority off of the BLACKFEATHER that we've seen focused by so many teams. Obviously, it's still a very strong pick, but the main reason why BLACKFEATHER was so heavily prioritized was because of its strength into things like the Celeste. Grace and Catherine, going to be the two captains. Kind of expected, if they're not banned, that they're going to be picked very
Salty
early.
Potatoes are going to have to be careful about the fact that G2 can still run Vox, Fortress, Grace. They did it. We saw the comp yesterday. G2 didn't quite do it with Grace, but we saw the comp, and they've ran it in the past with Lance. It's a very similar composition, works in the exact same way, actually. So Salty Potatoes have to be careful. They take away Glaive. I'm not quite sure why they would do that, because we haven't seen Glaive come out too much out of G2, especially in these last 2 seasons. Dark Potato hasn't been playing it too often, neither has been Hundor. Maybe perhaps they just don't want to go against that pick, and it could counter something that they're going for. G2 now, they have the options of either locking in a carry and trying to secure a power pick, or flexing something by picking up Fortress, and that way you can still flex the Grace and flex the Fortress going into multiple
Taking the Fortress, I think, would be really risky, though, because Salty Potatoes could then just pick up the Vox and just deny that composition, and there's not a whole lot of things you would want to run with the Fortress. But the Idris is it's a risky pick here. Normally, I love Idris with Grace, but you're going into a Catherine who is known as the hardest counter into an Idris, so it's a risky pickup for the side of G2. Hopefully they'll be able to play it out. Obviously with the CP Idris, it's not as hard of a counter, but Catherine is still so strong.
Yeah, the Kestrel locking somewhat explains the Glaive ban that we saw coming out from Salty Potatoes earlier. Obviously Glaive does very well trying to lock down a Kestrel, sorry. So I'm curious to see how they're going to round this one out.
Yeah, I mean, Kestrel and Catherine is a pretty strong duo, just because you have a lot of CC control with the stuns coming out of Catherine with the Merciless Pursuit, and then Kestrel following up with her damage. We know the crit builds that she can go with the double monocles and the tornado triggers, and they pick up a Blackfeather with it. I'm assuming this is going to be a CP Blackfeather in the jungle, unless they want to run it in lane and put Kestrel in the jungle as CP.
Yeah.
I'm expecting it to be weapon power Kestrel with a CP Blackfeather jungle, and this composition has a lot of poke mid game when Blackfeather gets to his level 8. It has very strong late game team fighting control, just because there's a lot of diving, a lot of damage output potential, and a lot of CC coming from Catherine. So it's a pretty good overall composition. The only weakness that it has is its early game, especially with the CP Blackfeather. So if G2 decides to go for a really aggressive jungler, they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's really what G2 is going to have to do, because if you don't win the early game against this composition, Salty Potatoes, I love this composition just because it is strong in multiple different strategies. If you want to poke, you have Blackfeather and Kestrel, both great at poking, and Catherine receiving poke is really good, at being able to counter that out. And they can also dive pretty aggressively. The Krull, I think, is a smart pickup here into the Blackfeather. You can really dominate the jungle pretty early on with a Krull into the Blackfeather matchup, especially CP, because the CP Blackfeather does not have a good clear speed whatsoever, especially because they don't really build a Stormguard banner on a Blackfeather if you're going CP. So hopefully this Krull is going to be very aggressive, trying to get into the jungle constantly.
Yeah, I definitely like G2's composition better, just because they have the Krull with CP Idris and a Grace, so they have strong early game ganking potential and aggressive play potential, but at the same time, CP Idris and Grace scale so well and can end up being the carries they need to win the team fights later on. So I really like G2's composition into Salty Potatoes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these compositions are going to play out. Obviously, we kind of have one that's much more towards the late game, one that's going to be much more aggressive in the early game. But we saw yesterday what Truth could do on that weapon power Kestrel. If we see that come out and they do get to the late game, expect health bars to be obliterated. But we want you guys at home as well to get involved in this conversation and let us know who you want to be moving on into the finals later on today. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter to let us know who you are supporting coming on into this one. It's the grudge match, though, between G2 Esports and Salty Potatoes. So let's get on into this one and jump onto the Halcyon Fold.
Thank you very much, Munchables. A grudge match indeed. Both these teams were fighting to go to the Unified Western Live Championships back in summer. G2 was able to take that position from Salty Potatoes. So we'll have to see, Denominate, how Salty Potatoes react to that theft of a 6th place in the summer Vainglory8.
Yeah, Salty Potatoes obviously did a good job fighting their way up from the Challenger battles and made it into the Vainglory8. Maybe not with the success that they wanted, but they've made a couple changes and are looking to have a little bit more success this time around. Have to see how this Catherine does into the Idris, though. Mr. Downs here doesn't seem to think it's a good counter.
Right, okay, so when Idris was introduced to the Vainglory competitive meta, Idris was played primarily as a weapon power hero, and Catherine is really good into weapon power Idris, I'll admit it, you know, because Idris dives on in, onto the back line, and Catherine instantly stuns, and Idris is kind of left there standing still, but this is CP Idris. He has so much range, he has so much kiting ability. Hundor very likely to build a Frostburn as his last item, which is going to give him even more kiting ability, plus the Shadow Glass for the massive amount of damage, just really going for max damage with his build. And I just don't see really how Catherine is going to counter Hundor. The only counter that I guess you can consider, and now I'm rambling the nominate, is that the Storm Guard bubble will hurt his teammates who are going to be on the front line. But if Hundor is clever, then it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely, and we know what a threat Hundor can be when he does get on this hero. And one paired up with Dark Potatoes Krull and Kiana Nakoa's Grace. That's a scary thing to think of, so there's definitely a point in this game where Sneaky and Esquire need to really abuse their mid-game power spike and try to prevent Hundor from getting to that third and fourth item safely if they want to really have some success here. Because overall, as the game gets later and later, I think G2 has a significantly stronger draft.
Oh, I agree. G2's draft looking very scary. Really going to be Dark Potato to get them through this early game, but we see Salty Potato is actually struggling to do anything to Hundor here, even when Krax is stacking up that Merciless Pursuit. 7 stacks at 2.5 minutes. Hundor's really just giving it to him for free, but despite the fact that that CC is there, it's not really doing anything. Esquire in the jungle struggling. Dark Potato, he's looking for first blood, and Kiana Nakoa is rotating as well. This should be first blood to Dark Potato as he dives on in, smites him away, and that's going to be the kill going over. Now it's Krax in trouble. 1 HP! Maybe a little bit more than 1, but Hundor says, you know what, I might be able to get the kill. He can't, so it will be Krax escaping from G2.
Yeah, first blood though going on to Dark Potato. That's a pretty sizable burst of gold going on to a Krull's pocket. So that will help him get to that tanky point where it's going to help Hundor be that hyper carry. Dinky did almost drop in the lane there, but was able to get out safely.
I really like how Salty Potatoes are attempting to put the pressure onto G2. But this Grace pick in the early game provides so much damage for the side of G2, really augments the poor early game that CP Idris has. Kiana Nakoa is kind of the reason that Hundor's so safe and so dominant in the lane so far.
Yeah, exactly, and you know, Dark Potato as well, maybe not the strongest early game, definitely can fare well in the early game as we saw, but will become a much bigger threat as the game goes on. It will be interesting to see what route Dark Potato decides to go on this Krull. He could go with that Tension Bow Poison Shiv build that we've seen so popular on so many people, or he could just go into a very tanky, protect the Hundor kind of play style, which we know G2 so well for. And so far the farm is pretty even. We have about 1,000 gold advantage on the side of G2, and that is Dark Potato is pretty sizably ahead in the jungle, and Hundor a little bit ahead in the lane. Not anything major, nothing that Sneaky Potatoes can't come back from, but definitely a huge advantage for G2 to take a late game composition and be ahead early.
Oh, for sure. They are just over 1,000 gold ahead, which doesn't sound like much. It is huge for a late game composition to be ahead. And it's not to say that Salty Potatoes have this early game composition that they're meant to win with. Their game is going to be pretty good in late. CP BLACKFEATHER, weapon power, KESTREL, lots of power there, but they just haven't quite found the damage yet. And this puts G2 in a really a strong position, and Salty Potatoes in a compromising one. We see Shadow Glass now for Hundor here. He has so much damage available to him from Hell's Heart, waiting to be used by Dark Potato as he lurks in the shadows. Have to see where they strike. Esquire gonna move on in, trying to escape. It's a stun onto Krax, not the main target. That should save Salty Potatoes here as Esquire looks to continue the poke. The fountain is not there for Krax. Worth noting, he has so much gold but hasn't been back to shop, and he is looking to backport now.
Yeah, and if that gold's in your pocket, pocket, it's not going to help you in the next team fight. But as we get closer to level 8 for this BLACKFEATHER, he'll obviously get that additional range on those on points as well as additional damage. And that is absolutely huge for what a Crystal BLACKFEATHER needs to succeed in a fight. Might go too far, though.
Yeah, it's very deep. Fountain will be forced. Sneaky going to take poke damage as well. G2 have split here. This should be good for Salty Potatoes. Kianakoa is going to run. Dark Potato wasn't able to charge up his passive, so it's going to be an escape here. And maybe we should talk about this roster for Salty Potatoes, as Krax is going to be engaged upon by G2, but I'm not sure they're going to continue on. Maybe they do. Holy Nova, there's that Chakram. Sneaky almost dead. Krax almost dead as well, but they can't quite find the kills. It's just going to be everyone escaping by their hairs on their chin. This Salty Potatoes roster, it's something that we haven't seen yet. Esquire and Krax stepping in for the Joker and Class. It is not the main Salty Potatoes roster, but after their week 1 loss, Sneaky didn't feel like Joker and Class were quite holding their weight, so he's decided to switch things up here and see if Esquire and Krax can make up for I guess the level of play that Sneaky didn't think that his other teammates were currently competing at.
Well, so far I'm going to have to say with first turret going to G2, that might not be looking like that was the case, but we'll have to see as the rest of the series goes on. Obviously, they have made it to day 2, so they are a little bit farther this time around, but, you know, that's, you know, G2 has really come into their own. They've really become one of those teams that everybody in the league has to really consider when going into these games. You know, last season, G2 just barely avoided dropping in the challenge battles. And, you know, now, you know, looking at them at this point, it's like, how were they ever in that position?
I have to agree with you there, because we know that G2 was a formidable team. They were the spring champions. 1st place to 6th place, not really where you want to be. But there were excuses, some fairly genuine excuses, and I think the fact that G2 have come into the autumn season fairly strong, fairly committed to the game, and have been performing well since, I guess, regular player in the Vainglory8. It shows that their excuses are valid. This is a team that you have to fear in Europe.
Yeah, and Dark Potato and Hundor. Oh, Hundor on point, really chunking him out there, Dowsy.
Should be okay for now, but one Divine Intervention was used to heal him up, and actually, looking at Dark Potato's health as well, Salty Potatoes in a position where they can continue that upgraded on point, level 8, extra range, and Esquire is abusing it currently. Hundo going to take some poke. Krax goes on in. This is Kianakoa going low. Will he pop the fountain is the question. Pops his healing flask, re-engages as well. Krax almost losing his life, but holding onto the fountain. Dark Potato is going to try and threaten here. Looks like Salty Potato is going to leave the fight.
Yeah, Salty Potatoes, you know, was doing a good job with the poke there. Unfortunately, they weren't able to find a kill, and as a result, they weren't really able to get anything as far as objective damage down either. Obviously, the gold mine is now full, so both teams are going to have to start considering that as Kianakoa pops some vision off on the side of Sneaky Potatoes here. BLACKFEATHER not quite going to be able to get the damage down here to follow up on anything, but so far we have, you know, a small lead still for Dark Potato in the jungle, as well as having that first blood. He has that tension bow complete, as well as he's gone with the Aegis to prevent some of that poke damage that Esquire is going to be able to put out on this BLACKFEATHER. Obviously going that Shatterglass first does provide a raw burst of damage when you land those on points, but will be negated a bit by the Aegis, as it is now G2 starting up the gold mine. Will Salty Potatoes find their way down here in time? It does not look like they're going to.
Oh, it just goes so quickly. When Hundor moves into melee range, he gets bonus weapon power damage instead of just the crystal power damage that his auto attacks receive due to the Divergent Paths heroic perk that Idris has, with Accrual there as well. Very, very quick objectives here for G2. Something you're going to have to consider is that they could take a turret, they could take a Kraken very, very quickly. Salty Potatoes can't really allow them to rotate into that position.
Yeah, we do have an infusion right now on Hundor. Level 8 infusion popped. Dark Potato has a level 9 infusion in pocket. But Sneaky and Esquire also have infusions in their pockets. This next fight, if it does break out, will really determine who's going to get their gold value out of those infusions. If you lose out on a team fight and you infused for it, then that infusion essentially goes to waste.
Ooh, lots of damage. That's going to be a one-shot connecting Divine Intervention. Should heal Hundor up to just 3/4 of his HP. Hundor looking like he popped the healing flask as well, so not going to have that up for the next fight either. Esquire is really doing a lot of work here. This artillery composition from Salty Potatoes has a lot of threat if G2 can't hard engage. G2 need to hard engage, get that cruel Grace onto the front line. Idris, the broken myth needs to be purchased. There it is. There's the engage. Oh, it's beautiful. 3-man holding over. In fact, Esquire able to get out of it, but it's 1 kill already to Dark Potato. 2, as that's the second going over. There's a stun. Krax looking like he shall fall. Dark Potato wants 3, but Krax isn't going to give it up as easily here. He should be able to escape by the looks of it as well, unless he missteps, which he hasn't. G2 with 2, now looking to steal away jungle.
Yeah, and taking away that jungle from this Blackfeather is absolutely key because it's so hard to come back in a game from a Crystal Blackfeather play. As a second turret now goes over to G2. There's a pretty sizable gold lead that has been developed for them. We're almost 12 minutes into this game, sitting at roughly 4,000 gold lead, working on 4,500. And so far, you know, just the build progression on everybody on G2 is really showing it. It is Hundor working into his 3rd offensive item. Sneaky is as well, but Esquire working into his 2nd offensive item. And Dark Potato already has 2 tier 3 offenses and a tier 3 defense complete, as well as working into that armor, which is going to help him survive that front line against Sneaky. Kiana Nakoa also going into that metal jacket very early on, going to make it very difficult for Sneaky to get the damage that he needs down.
Yeah, it's worth noting now that Hundor has this broken myth, Salty Potatoes have to be very scared of this Idris. The fact that Hundor doesn't have a reflex block shows how little he cares about this supposed Catherine counterpick. Merciless Pursuit, not even phasing him at this point of the game. D2, their weakness is poke. If they get out-poked to a point where Kiana Nakoa can't heal them, then that is kind of Salty Potatoes' win condition. In fact, I think their poke needs to be onto Kiana Nakoa, force out a Divine Intervention onto the Grace itself, and that will put G2 in a slightly worse position before a team fight starts.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you know, you mentioned it, now that Hundor has that broken myth online, this Idris really is going to start to take off in these fights, especially if Krax stays too forward a little too long. If Krax allows Hundor to build up any broken myth stacks before a fight begins, it is going to be a matter of Hundor hitting Sneaky with the Chakram and pretty much dropping him dangerously low immediately in a fight. And then Dark Potato is going to be able to come in with that Tension Bow proc and make short work of this squishy Kestrel. So we'll have to see if Krax can use the Merciless Pursuit and the Blast Tremor properly in these fights to make sure Kiana Nakoa is not able to heal his teammates with that Divine Intervention, as he is now working into an Echo, and Krax is nowhere near an Echo of his own. So Kiana Nakoa getting ready to hit a massive power spike here on Grace. 2 points into Divine Intervention. It's going to increase the healing. And when that Echo comes out, it's going to be crazy.
Ooh. Dark Potato gets immediately stunned up here. At Catherine may not be threatening the Idris, but definitely is threatening this Cruel, and a late reflex means that he gets stunned up and almost deleted. Kiana Nakoa didn't use anything to heal him. That is trust, I think, at that point, that Dark Potato is going to escape.
Yeah, absolutely. It had to be good communication coming out of them, because I thought for sure Dark Potato was going to die, but no Divine Intervention used, no Fountain, no Crucible, absolutely nothing. And that's going to keep it a 3-0 lead right now for the side of G2. And we do see that Grace and Kroll have to go in together. Here we go.
It's going to be a stun coming out, but Sneaky has to escape. They're going to turn onto Krax, taking a lot of damage. Oh, the Chakram on the backline. Sneaky almost does get deleted from the map. Like you mentioned, has to be careful. G2, they have 5 seconds to take this gold miner. I think they've realized that the clock is just too little, and they are going to allow it to be swallowed up by the Kraken. She's onto the fold. An Aegis and an Echo purchase for G2. This next team fight, Salty Potato is going to be at a deficit of power.
Absolutely, and as Kiana Nakoa is not letting up the aggression, Hundor is looking to come in here and build stacks, Dowsy.
He is. He's up to 4. A stun onto Kiana Nakoa. The poke is there, but Hundor also building up his own broken myth. Kiana Nakoa very happy to heal up using Life Spring, the passive on the Fountain. And G2, they're threatening Salty Potatoes. By pushing in the lane, they said to Salty Potatoes, you have to come check the Kraken, or you have to at least fight for vision. G2 go to backport, get their infusions online, clear out the backs as well. It's one thing that these teams are constantly thinking of, Denomine, is making sure that they're getting those jungle camps into their system so they keep up in experience, keep up in gold.
Yeah, absolutely, but one huge benefit G2 has at this point is Dark Potato on this Krull can essentially solo out a Kraken. So that could result in a situation where Kiana Nakoa and Hundor push the enemies back, make it difficult for them to come in and make an engagement. And the whole time, Dark Potato can sit there and just work on that Kraken. So that is a huge thing to make note of here going forward. Esquire and Sneaky, obviously, if they're able to get in here onto Hundor, who's playing very far forward, could find a lot of damage. But it is just going to be G2 backing off. Aegis now complete for Hundor as well as Dark Potato. And overall, just G2 is so far ahead at this point, and now as Hundor is working into his Frostburn, he is going to be a very scary threat to deal with, especially with no shielding here on Sneaky.
This is the thing. May talk about it in a second. Kiana Nakoa caught out. Hell's Heart blocked up. Looks like the fight is going to break out. Blast Tremor also blocked, but the one-shot comes through and Kiana Nakoa gets sniped. Hundor now has to find the damage as Dark Potato is going to be his front line. Cracks surviving. Hundor by himself, but he has so many broken myth stacks. He can win this 1v3. He's looking for it. Sneaky though in Fizz. Chakram will hit. He finds the kill, but the ace comes through. They trade. Salty Potatoes get 3 on the board and Cracks last man standing.
Alright, as we get into that replay, we see Kiana Nakoa drop dangerously low, and as they run away, Silence gets blocked, but Sneaky finds a one-shot, one-kill. All the time, though, Hundor is sitting here building up broken myth stacks. It is Dark Potato that drops next, but 300, 400 damage coming out of Hundor is enough to drop the Blackfeather. One final chakram before his life is taken. He finds a kill onto Sneaky as well. And Cracks, being a lone Catherine, not going to be able to really do anything off the back of that. Not strong enough to take a sentry, not strong enough to take a turret, and not strong enough to take a Kraken either. So overall,
he did get one turret for himself, which is...
Yeah, the minion wave took the turret, but the next turret he wasn't able to get. And obviously, you know, Catherine not going to be able to solo out that Kraken, no Storm Guard. So overall, not a huge loss for G2, considering Hundor was able to find 2.
No, agreed. Absolutely agreed. The goal does get a little bit slimmer, at least the lead, but it's not really going to hurt G2's chances. G2 are the kings, as I wanted to say before that fight broke out, of the late game. They are the European late game gods. However boring you may feel that playstyle is, you have to respect that G2 are the best when it comes to it. And every team that goes up against G2 knows this. They know that if G2 are going to draft a late game composition, then they have to win the early game. The pressure is on Salty Potatoes to win that early game. They did not. Now G2 in a great position to win this game. Kraken, very low. Kiana Nakoa blocking up that Blast Tremor. This Kraken's going to be contested here. Salty Potatoes have to be careful though, because Hundor has broken myth stacks, and Sneaky is very low on the back line. Great Crucible comes through to block up Hundor, just dancing around, but no Chakram to follow through. Doesn't matter, finds a kill onto Sneaky. Cracks will fall very shortly, and this Kraken is one auto attack. In fact, it's taken. Didn't even see it get taken. Easy fight for G2, and almost over, I think, for Salty Potatoes.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking good for them. This Idris is going to make short work of the turret while the Kraken is there soaking up a majority of the damage. And with 20-second death timers on Sneaky and Cracks, there's not going to be much that Esquire can do. G2, Kraken's not even here. Turret is dropping so quickly, Dousty. They're able to find a kill or two here. They could just end the game, but they have to be careful. We see teams all too often overstay on a Kraken push and give a huge advantage to the enemy.
Yeah, Hundor's looking to take this turret down, but he has taken a lot of poke. Divine Invention's ready to go. Hundor very low as well. Kiana Nakoa dies before he gets to use anything. The fountain wasn't actually up and ready, and that's going to be Hundor losing his life. Oh, you called it, Denomine. G2 with a massive overextension.
Yeah, stayed out way too far. Kiana Nakoa didn't have Fountain available, as well as, you mentioned, died before he was able to use the Divine Intervention on either himself or Hundor. And then as Hundor gets cut off, he does look for one kill, not quite able to find it. And just like that, Salty Potatoes picks up some bounties for themselves. And Sneaky now a 4 offensive item Kestrel. BLACKFEATHER does have the Broken Myth Shatterglass and a additional Piercing Shard in pocket. So those on points are going to start to hurt quite thoroughly. But, you know, again, this turret, very, very easy, at least, for G2 to take that down. Crystal Idris so good into the objectives, and that turret being below half health is not looking good for the side of Salty Potatoes here. This one, unless if a miracle fight happens where Hundor gets caught out way too in the front line, I don't know if I believe in the Salty Potato hype wagon.
Nakoa taking a lot of damage. Dark Potato, though, he is so tanky and has that divine intervention. Oh, Sneaky steps into a chakram. This is not good. Esquire is dead. Cracks frontlining. Stormguard bubble, not really doing anything for him to save his life. And G2 instantly going to turn and look to push into the base. 40 seconds on Esquire's death timer means that they have a chance to end it all here now, Denominate.
Yeah, they have a chance to. They do have to be careful. Dark Potato is going to heal himself up a little bit, but Nakoa is still pretty low, and with the Bonesaw on Sneaky, if he's able to get a couple Glimmer shots down, they could really ramp up the damage. And actually, G2 knows the threat that Sneaky can provide on this hero. They just turn their attention to the jungle, take down a Crystal Sentry, and then look to go and get some shopping done. 12 seconds left on Esquire. He will have enough in his pocket to re-infuse, as well as Sneaky has gold in his pocket to re-infuse, but we really need to see a Echo come out of cracks and get a good silence down. Kraken now on the board, and G2 wasting no time at all. Going to go ahead and start that one up. If Salty Potatoes can get a steal here and get the health regeneration from the Kraken, definitely see something happening.
Fight's gonna break out. Nakoa does get stunned up. Hundor uses his ultimate to reposition into the fight instantly. He's not gonna have that to escape. And look at the damage onto Dark Potato. He's dead. Salty Potatoes turning this fight. Nakoa not tanky enough. He's gonna go down to the one shot. Maybe it will be Esquire diving on in. There is so many mistakes coming out of G2 here. Salty Potatoes did literally nothing special in that fight. G2 are just over aggressive.
Yeah, they absolutely were, and like you mentioned, Hundor used the Shimmer Strike to try to get into a better position, and unfortunately, it left him in a very vulnerable situation. As a Crystal Idris, movement is your real source of defense, and then as Dark Potato gets blown up on that front line, the Bonesaw stacks building up from Sneaky on this Kestrel. They were able to take him down, and now that is a Kraken for Salty Potatoes. So the miracle fight wasn't getting Hundor down when he was out of position. It was Hundor being out of position that actually got Dark Potato killed.
Right.
And from there, they were able to take the rest of the fight. They get a Kraken. Echo is now complete for Catherine, and this is really the best chance at this point that the side of Salty Potatoes has to take an actual 3v3 fight and could potentially still win this game.
Nakoa is the key to this composition. He needs to be finding the correct engagements and not losing his life before his frontline can even join him. Turret has already fallen. Salty Potatoes, they're in a solid position at the moment, but they can't really push any further. So it is just going to be the Kraken left to die as it walks towards the Bane Crystal turret. Salty Potatoes to take away the Crystal Sentry and the rest of the jungle as well. And G2, this is their game to lose at this point, Denominate. If they continue not respecting Salty Potatoes, overextending Hundor, and overextending Nakoa, then it's an easy game to lose.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think both of these teams really have to respect each other and the damage that they can put out. It's been looking so good for G2, but when G2 doesn't respect the damage that Sneaky is able to put out, respect the utility that Cracks brings to the table, it oftentimes results in G2 making mistakes positionally and then ends up costing them the fight. Dark Potato is looking to work into a Crucible now to try to help out with the double silence coming out of Catherine. But, again, Sneaky has been such a huge threat in these past couple fights, blowing up Dark Potato, building up a couple Bonesaw stacks, and then the Glimmer shots raining in have just made short work of that Krull on the front line. Here we go.
Good stun. Dark Potato doesn't block it up. Now it is going to be the fight breaking out. Hundor trying to get into position. Throws the Chakram this time. Now he Shimmer Strikes. That's how you do it. And that will be Sneaky going down. It's Esquire falling very quickly. Easy fight for G2. It seems like Hundor's realized his mistakes, not using his ultimate for combos, and Cracks, well, he can't do anything here. He will fall very quickly. And Ace comes through for G2. They figure out the pieces of the puzzle. Now it's time to deal with that last remaining Vainglory turret.
Absolutely, and I do want to make note that Hundor did go the Eve of Harvest for his 4th item. We didn't touch on it, but it did give him the additional survivability in those past couple fights. And just like that, G2 proving that they are a team to be reckoned. And we will be getting into a game number 2 here very shortly, and hopefully, I think if you are the side of Salty Potatoes, you have to consider that G2 runs those late game compositions. You need to pick something that can really handle that CP Idris in the late game if you're going to allow it to go through.
Yeah, I think that's it. If you don't have the stronger late game composition, then get the stronger early game and finish it out. Salty Potatoes continuing to fall to G2. It's 1-0 in the series. Let's see what the desk has to say.
Thank you very much, guys. What a game coming out. G2 did manage to take that one in the end, but I have to ask you guys on the desk with me, what went on there? Because when we finished the draft, we were saying that it was Salty Potatoes that had the late game composition, but once we actually got into it, G2 once again come up trumps when it gets to the late game.
They weren't able to have the engage that we were talking about. We talked about the fact that it was a very versatile composition that Salty Potatoes had drafted, but they were only really able to try and play the disengage, the try and kite away from G2. They were never really able to be the ones that hard engaged onto their opponents.
Well, I actually did say that G2 had the better late game composition just because they had the CP Idris and the Grace. And why CP Idris and Grace are so strong late game, they're actually the strongest late game, is because CP Idris, once he scales and gets his full items, his full build, his damage output is none to second. And Grace's healing potential, once she hits level 12 and she has all 3 levels of her ultimate and has the echo, that's so much sustain coming onto whoever she uses to ult, or she chooses to ult. And then the Cruel is there both to provide a little bit of early game protection to not fall behind, and then later on to protect the CP Idris.
All right, let's take a look at some of how the action played out across the course of this game. We have a fight just beyond 16 minutes here as Keanu Nakoa gets caught out, but it doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, it was Keanu Nakoa got dropped so low right off the bat and ends up going down without using the fountain, without using any ultimates. And still, you can see Hundor so strong. Once he gets those broken mid stacks built up, is able to turn this fight from what was a disaster for G2 into a situation that wasn't quite so bad. I mean, a 2 for 3, obviously not ideal, but not the worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like the end of that fight could have gone a different way had it been played slightly differently. I know you were saying that when we were watching it as well.
Yeah, I think Hundor could have done just a little bit better, but he still did phenomenally well in that team fight. The thing is, Keanu, and I know I keep talking about this player, it's nothing obviously against him. He needs to step up because the rest of the team is performing a lot better. He needs to keep up with his teammates and make sure that he provides to them what they need and not make these mistakes that he's been making these first 2 weeks.
All right, let's take a look at the moment in the game where we saw Salty Potatoes start to get back on the horse after they'd lost Kraken. They did manage to win out a fight.
Yeah, they were able to just wait until their respawns came through before trying to go for any sort of engage, just working on the Kraken a little bit. But then once the engage happens, again, they're able to get Keanu Nakoa extremely low and take him out first. I think that was really the key for the side of Salty Potatoes, was taking Keanu either low or killing him right off the bat. Just get him out of the fight so that he's now has to think, do I use these resources that are generally going to be used to heal my teammates on myself, or do I just actually try and hold them and risk going down?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the reason why this comp is so strong is because Grace's sustain is incredible. If she uses her ultimate, then echoes it to use it the second time. We see Gabe Vizzle, when he usually plays Grace, he tends to actually sit a little bit on the back line so that he doesn't get killed as easily as Keanu was being killed in that game. And that's just something for any Grace player to recognize your positioning.
Yeah, absolutely. The next replay we have is Salty Potatoes managing to take advantage once again. This is kind of the story of the game. Was G2, they had these advantages but kept on just overstepping slightly.
Yeah, and this was Dowsey worded it pretty effectively in here, and that Salty Potatoes doesn't do anything really special here. They kite back this fight and just are getting this damage out. They're able to actually take down the Krull before he gets the healing from that second Divine Intervention. But again, Hundor using the ultimate early in the fight to try and engage when he really didn't have to. You know, you can just throw chakrams over the wall. You can sit there and just attack and maneuver yourself around the wall while attacking because you have that range. Instead, he uses the ultimate, which is a great escape tool, ends up kind of blowing that very early in the fight, doesn't have it later on, and again puts Keanu Nako into this really difficult situation.
I mean, it's a common mistake that we see CP Idrises actually do, because when you start the team fight, you have generally so much damage that you expect, okay, I'm gonna ult here and I'm just gonna kill everyone. But what ends up happening, because you haven't stacked your Broken Myth yet, your damage is actually not that high. It's a lot better to just sit on the back line, deal the damage, and then as your Broken Myth stacks, you go in and use your ultimate.
Absolutely. Now, final replay from this one. It's going to be G2. Do manage to win the fight off of this one. They didn't actually quite end the game off of this fight, but it was a good fight for them.
Yeah, and again, look at Keanu's positioning. He's in the back of the fight. He's not involved in the front lines. He's not, you know, taking any damage. He's able to just sit back and keep his team healed up and alive. That's how you be positioned as a Grace once you get into the late game.
There was the ace coming on through, and actually I made a mistake. It was the catch before this that they didn't win off. They did actually win off the back of that fight. So G2 now 1-0 in this series, taking the lead against Salty Potatoes. And honestly, we mentioned earlier that this has been somewhat of a grudge match. We've seen these guys go head-to-head multiple times in the past, and now G2 looking to maybe be the favorites coming out of this one. Obviously, here with their full roster as well. We'll see how that's going to play out across the course of this series. Let's talk about the draft coming into this next one. What do we think Salty Potatoes have to change coming on in to actually be able to contest this?
If you're going to allow Grace to go over, don't give them Idris. I mean, so many teams are still doing this, and I just don't understand why it's such a strong duo. There are ways to beat it, but like Zoro said, you have to be so aggressive early on. And that's just not something we see out of European teams.
And especially combined with Cruel. Cruel denies you that early game aggression. So if you give the composition that's so strong late game to the opponent, make sure you have a stronger early game composition, like the casters were mentioned, like you were mentioning, Munchables, and that's how you beat it.
All right, we'll see if they can redraft this one coming on through. We'll be able to start the draft very shortly for you guys. I'm curious to see how Sneaky's going to do coming on into this second one. Obviously, wasn't quite able to carry his team last time around, but G2 going to start things off with a land span here.
And I mean, again, the thing you might Salty Potatoes, it was not, they were not out of this game. Like, they were still very much in it. They had opportunities. It's just very small things that could be corrected. But this is a great start for Salty Potatoes, getting the BLACKFEATHER into the CP or into the Celeste.
That is true. One thing worth noting is this is the second time G2's banned Blance first time. So it could be a pick that Krags is known for in the European region, so G2 don't want to see him on it. Celeste, they end up first picking it instead of first picking Grace. It's a little bit curious. I know they feel very confident with Hundor on that pick, but I think it might be a little bit overconfident with the BLACKFEATHER coming onto the side of Salty Potatoes especially.
Yeah, it's kind of strange also that they're banning the Lance, because obviously Dark Potato is so well known for his Lance. So either way, they really wanted that Celeste, obviously feeling confident enough to take it without worrying about the BLACKFEATHER. Ardan's going to get picked up for the side of Salty Potatoes, and this is looking like they may be going for something really early game power focused, because Ardan is able to provide a lot of that in the jungle.
Yeah, and the Cruel ban, the Cruel pick for G2 and especially Dark Potato is actually so incredible. I am surprised that G2 hasn't realized it quite that much yet, because it both serves a purpose of being a jungle carry on your own, because Cruel can outduel, he has a lot of ganking potential, but also it works perfectly in their strategies where they want to protect their carry, who's usually Hondor on Celeste or CP Idris or KESTREL, whoever he's playing. Cruel is perfect for both being a solo hero and a team hero to protect your carry, and that's exactly what G2 needs to diverse a little bit. So I like the ban from Salty Potatoes. They end up picking the Ardan. Like you said, Tasty Bacon, this is going to be a strong mid-game composition, especially if it's a BLACKFEATHER weapon power. He hits a huge power spike once he gets his level 6 and picks up an item or two. Lyra and Glaive, we saw the ban from Salty Potatoes last draft, and I mentioned it's not that significant of a pick for G2, but they end up picking it here, and this is a strong comp nevertheless, because Celeste and Glaive can chain CC. Lyra has a lot of sustain. The only thing is it's a little bit of a squishy comp, so if Salty Potatoes gets a really strong carry here, they can, they go for the Rhyme. So that's a BLACKFEATHER lane weapon power.
Yeah, so, well, for one, having Sneaky on BLACKFEATHER is incredible.
Okay.
Like, it is one of his best picks by a long shot. It is going to be so much fun to get to watch this pick again. We saw it when he was making his run through the challengers, played it so frequently, and was just dominant. Like, no one could deal with it. So I'm really excited to get to see this, but the Rhyme pick is still a little bit questionable to me.
Yeah, the Rhyme, we typically see it going into melee cleave compositions, but against the Celeste, I don't know how it's going to be able to fare.
I mean, it's going to counter the glaive pretty well. And what I'm expecting is they're going to want to put a lot of jungle pressure with the Rhyme counter pick into glaive, scale the BLACKFEATHER. BLACKFEATHER's laning phase in the early game is a little bit weak until he gets to his level 6. But once he does that and picks up a couple of items, gets a little bit of defense, as I mentioned, he can be extremely effective against Celeste, as we already know. So as they scale and play a little bit aggressive in the jungle, if they get small leads throughout mid-game, they can start diving Celeste and killing her very effectively in the late game.
All right, well, it's time to get on into this one. Game number 2 of the series is about to begin. Let us know whether you want G2 to finish this one off or if you want Salty Potatoes to push it to 3 games. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter. But without further ado, let's pass it back to Dowsy and Denomine to get this game underway.
Ooh-wee, it's Sneaky's BLACKFEATHER coming on through. This guy is a BLACKFEATHER god. We've seen it perhaps once or twice on the Vainglory8 stage, Denomine, up against Hundor Celeste, who was just so threatening yesterday. Going to be an exciting game 2.
Yeah, it absolutely should be. We all know, obviously, that the BLACKFEATHER is one of the hardest counters to a Celeste. So we'll have to see if they're able to pull it through together here. And then, obviously, in the jungle, Esquire on the Rhyme into the glaive. Obviously, pretty easy to win out those trades, especially in the early and mid game. This is all going to come down to if Hundor is able to stay in a safe place from this BLACKFEATHER, and if Keanu Nakoa can use his kit correctly to help Hundor disengage safely and turn the fights around.
So, we're going to get a level 1 fight here. Looks like it, as Esquire is moving towards the central tree. Maybe not, actually. Dark Potato going for Sneaky, looking for an afterburn. Here we go. Oh no, core collapse dodge. Sneaky dodging the CC train. And he is able to get out of that gank alive. What do we say? Perhaps one of the best BLACKFEATHERs in the world.
That was pretty beautiful use, actually, of the Feint of Heart. That core collapse was coming through right on him. He targets a minion and dashes out of the way and actually gets out safely.
Oh, now he's looking for
it's now Hundor.
Hundor's in so much trouble. Hundor goes down. Sneaky first blood. That is a statement right there, and it's not done yet. Esquire invading Dark Potato's jungle as we speak, stealing away these camps. This Rhyme purely used to deal with the glaive, but he's not quite able to get all of them, so he is going to have to backport.
Yeah, not quite able to get all of it, but, you know, anything you can take away is really ideal. Dark Potato is a couple CS up right now and is looking to actually do a little bit of counter invading himself, likely to take a half rotation safely. But man, Sneaky already impressing me on this BLACKFEATHER. And as you mentioned, it probably one of the best BLACKFEATHERs, so we'll have to see if he's able to carry that through the late game. We know how good Hundor is on these hyper carry heroes, and Celeste definitely able to make short work of a Rhyme and a BLACKFEATHER if she's given the means to do so by the rest of her team.
Certainly, Crack's struggling a little bit in this early game. Has no Iron Guard contract, so no real healing available to him. You see Esquire invading once more, looking to steal these back camps away. Doesn't get them though. Dark Potato able to secure them. Is going to be Esquire just chasing around. Oh, Sneaky under the turret is going to fall. Just missed it. But Hundor putting the pressure down, and this double melee lane definitely struggles into the double range. Something that I think Salty Potatoes have to be careful of as Hundor gets chased under his turret by Krax's ARDAN. Very risky early game for Salty Potatoes.
Yeah, definitely, you know, both teams showing their dominance a little bit here. Sneaky pulling out that first blood onto Hundor. Hundor coming back with a vengeance, though, and picks up a return kill onto Sneaky. Both of these teams, you know, obviously want to get this win. G2 wants to close it out early so they can enjoy the rest of their weekend, but obviously Salty Potato is going to look to have something to say about that, as it is Hundor trying to get some return damage down onto Sneaky. Not quite able to find it, though, Dowsy. So
Not quite yet. Sneaky dodging
Yes.
away from it.
Celeste not at that point in the game where she has her additional range, which is what's really going to be the key benefit of the Celeste in this matchup, is being able to poke out Esquire before he's able to get to the back line and get a root down.
Yeah, no, I think that Esquire's job is purely to 1v1 Dark Potato while Sneaky deals with Hundor. Sneaky on this BLACKFEATHER, we already know that BLACKFEATHER's fantastic into Celeste. We've probably heard that quite a few times as Celeste has made her way back into the meta here, and even before 2.7, 2.6 when Celeste was creeping back in, we've heard it then as well. The question for me, and I think the question really for Salty Potatoes that I have is, imagine, Denominate, you have this player on your team who's a one-trick pony, you know, maybe this player like Idris or something. You
Specifically
would give that player,
CP
you would give that player that one trick. Sneaky's been accused of being a one trick. Now this guy is certainly not a one trick. He has upped his hero pool significantly, has so many different colorful picks he can take to the lane, but his BLACKFEATHER's so good. Just and every time Salty Potatoes drafts BLACKFEATHER in the Vainglory8, it goes to the Joker, it goes to Esquire. They really like their CP BLACKFEATHER for some reason. Now giving it to Sneaky, it feels like everything is in the right place, and I feel like this is perhaps the way Salty Potatoes takes games off these top European teams.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is BLACKFEATHER is regarded as one of the best counters to a Celeste, because obviously Celeste's defense is usually her positioning using the core collapse to stun up melee heroes that want to get to her, and BLACKFEATHER with so much movement in his kit, as well as it gets the additional barrier from landing that on point, can really provide a lot of survivability. But here, looking like we might have a fight breaking out, Dowsy.
Currently, G2 putting the pressure on to Salty Potatoes, keeping them under the turret, stealing away some camps. Dark Potatoes doing a great job of that. First item, Sora Blade, comes out for Sneaky as he's going to be making his way back down to the base, to the lane, but Cracks may lose his life under the turret. Esquire moves in, forces a fountain out of his teammate there. Now Sneaky's moving on to Hundor, looking for the kill. Hasn't quite found the execute. Kianakoa has no fountain, opted in for the Crucible first, for the burst healing he can get from his Sigil. Salty Potatoes now perhaps looking like to abuse that.
Yeah, definitely trying to, as they take away some of the additional farm here from G2's jungle, and they are not done with this aggression here in the lane. Dark Potato and Kianakoa pretty low. Imperial Sigil is going to heal them up a little bit, but it is just Esquire looking to follow up on some more damage. I don't think he's got what it takes, but overall they're doing a great job this game around. But
oh
on
my
Hundor.
goodness, Hundor is just dead for sure. Sneaky will find that kill. Esquire gets it. Dark Potato moves on in, looking for Esquire. Esquire is going to die to the turret. In fact, Kianakoa able to pick up the snipe. But before that happened, Esquire pulled the lane right out to allow his minions to crash into the turret. If Esquire hadn't done that, then there was no way Salty Potatoes could get on top of Hundor.
Yeah, definitely not. And, Esquire forcing Dark Potato back is going to be probably a story of most of this game. And it's actually going to come down to Dark Potato later on, helping Hundor, be protected on that back line. If Rhyme makes it to Hundor and gets a root down, it is going to be a matter of time before Sneaky's able to come through and find, a kill onto that squishy back line. So it's going to be about Dark Potato making sure that Esquire never has a safe route to get to Celeste, because they really need both of their damage if they want to take down Hundor. His positioning is so good, and with the Bright Bulwark coming out of Kianakoa, the Imperial Sigil coming out of Kianakoa, it is going to be very difficult for Sneaky to use this counter to its best effect.
One thing that is probably understated is how good Rhyme is into Lyra. Lyra pops those sigils down, Rhyme pops a Winter Spire on top of the sigil. Very difficult to make your decision whether you're going to stick through the healing or give that damage over to Esquire. So almost a counter pick, you could argue Rhyme is into Lyra, especially when this Lyra is focusing on health stacking to make sure her sigils are kind of prioritized by her teammates. We'll have to see how Esquire really deals with Kianakoa.
Yeah, it is going to come down to, the Rhyme play here is going to be so detrimental. Now, looking over at Kianakoa, we're almost 9 minutes into this game. He does not have a fountain complete. He has the gold, but not quite there. But now it is Esquire coming around the back.
Coming for a flank. Great bright bulwark stops any engage come through from Sneaky or Cracks, but Salty Potatoes are going to just take this opportunity to run down the lane and move in for this turret, and they can look for a fight here if they want to. Sigil, passageway over to get on in. Winter Spire will connect with Kiana Nakoa. This turret down to half HP as the Winter Spire looking for some damage, but it is just damage at this point. No turret has fallen yet for G2. Ultimates have been used, and these Helogenesis at max rage, providing a bit of a trouble for this melee composition of Salty Potatoes. Good poke comes out of them. They want to continue this aggression, but they're running out of energy on Esquire. I feel like Salty Potatoes will back away.
Hundor is running out of energy as well, and Glaive is in a very tough position right now. They are giving Keanu Nakoa time to heal him up, though, so he will be healthy for the next fight. Fortunately, it's kind of difficult to push in a turret with Rhyme. Here we go.
Sneaky is going to be engaged upon. He goes down before the fountain heals him. Esquire jungling at the backs. G2 recognize it, see him pass past the sentry and execute immediately onto Sneaky's BLACKFEATHER, but Esquire will at least get an objective for himself. The Crystal Sentry falls. The turret's going to go down as well. Gold kind of going to go over to G2 here, just ever so slightly, as they take that first objective lead.
Yeah, looking really good for them right now. Finding a kill onto Sneaky, and then Celeste, even with not a whole lot of energy, is just so good at sieging up turrets, and that's exactly what we saw there. So far, still a very close game. First turret does go over to G2, but the gold lead is still in the favor of Salty Potatoes, thanks to the incredible rotations out of Esquire, getting pretty sizably ahead of this Glaive in the jungle. Working into a Eve of Harvest for his second item. He now has it as Glaive is working into his Sorrow Blade. Still quite a bit of gold away here on this Glaive, and this still could be anyone's game, Dowsey. Obviously, we talked about how good the Rhyme is into both the Glaive and the Lyra. It is going to be all about Hundor this game, and this is what G2 is really known for, is protect Hundor, and they win their games.
Right, it's perhaps against another team when you say that the carry has to be the solo carry, then you go, okay, maybe there's a possibility the other team have put them in an uncomfortable position. This is where G2 thrives. Haven't put G2 into an uncomfortable position. They've laid down a recliner. The sofa is nice and plushed. There's a cute little blanket to keep G2 nice and warm. They're sitting in front of the television. G2 having a great time this Sunday evening. It's going to be Salty Potatoes, though, moving in, looking to try and catch Hundo out of position, but the bright bullet stops that immediately. Salty Potatoes really just struggling to find any fights for themselves, no real positions where they can catch G2 and really make them sweat.
Yeah, and, you know, for Esquire on this Rhyme, he now has the Shatterglass complete, has the Eve of Harvest complete. I think I would like to see him go upon the original route and get those tier 3 journey boots for those hard engages. But oh no!
Gets the sentry, but he's going to die for it. What can Salty Potatoes get for it is the question on the other side of the map. Cracks moving in. Doesn't actually use anything, but maybe perhaps puts himself in a compromising position. Sneaky's moving on top of this turret. Is going to be Sneaky up against 3 of G2 as they dive on top of Sneaky. Salty Potatoes happy to execute themselves for these, but that's some nice play from Sneaky to at least get some distance. Won't get away, definitely pulls G2 around. G2 going to take this gold miner though. They're going to strike back with some gold of their own.
Yeah, absolutely, and the reason for the Rhyme that I would like to see the Journey Boots come out is he wants to get to that back line and root up the Celeste, and if he goes with the Journey Boots route, obviously if you damage an enemy hero, it does reset your Boots proc down pretty sizably, so it would make it available multiple times throughout a fight if it's an extended fight. And it would be up for every fight is more so the key thing, and that's really what we need out of Esquire here. We need him to get to the back line and help lock down Celeste for Sneaky, and he won't even be at too much of a danger because Cracks at this point in the game with those Vanguards has quite a sizable barrier that will help protect him from the damage that Celeste is able to output. Working into some shield, but no armor yet on this Rhyme. So really showing Hundor that he is the biggest threat on the team right now.
And considering you brought up items, let's talk about them. Tension Bow for Sneaky makes sense. The proc bursting onto the Celeste can do a lot of damage, but Esquire Shatterglass, a little bit peculiar. Typically we see first items on a Rhyme be something like a Broken Myth or an Eve of Harvest. Shatterglass not really a part of his regular kit.
Well, that's because someone here is learning from Pond the original. You go with the Shatterglass first. It actually gives you as much sustain, if not more sustain, than the Eve of Harvest, because you get that additional fortified health through your actual damage, Winter Spire, your basic attacks. You don't need as much healing at that point because you're actually negating more damage than you would have healed. So overall, I do like this, but here we go.
Gonna be Esquire engaged on. Great Winter Spire stuns up too, but he's losing his life. Trying to reposition to get on top of Hundor. Sneaky is so far back, and Hundor will take the Rhyme out of the fight. Sneaky dives into that Solar Storm, and Hundor will find a double for it. Only Cracks left standing. Doesn't even use his Gauntlet in this fight. G2 so comfortable. Salty Potatoes not even threatening, and the turret will go to G2.
Yeah, another turret going to G2. That is a Celeste making short work of objectives, which we know her so good to be. But 15 minutes in the game, you do not want to lose a fight at this point, as now G2 is starting up the Kraken and is going to have it down probably before Esquire is even able to make it all the way across the map here. Boost proc is available, and Krax is coming over. He's going to have vision on it. Dowsey, can we have the Miracle Steal?
Miracle Steel, Cracks blood for blood. Oh, Brightbolt denies, and now Cracks is dead. He will go down. Sneaky tries to dive on in and threaten out Hundor, but he gets destroyed by a Solar Storm. Only Esquire left. Should I say no anymore? An ace will come through for G2. 10-2. Kraken marching. They're looking for game 2 and a spot into this week's finals.
Yeah, it's looking really good for them. Obviously, with death timer so low. We get into this replay though. Cracks comes over and does try to get the steal. Not quite going to be able to. It is Hundor locking it up, and then a good stun chain down onto Cracks gets him killed. And at that point, Sneaky had just gone a bit too far.
Oh, Gauntlet's gone down. We're going to have to cut you, Denominate, because Salty Potatoes are trying to defend their base here. Both Vein Crystals have fallen. Salty Potatoes need this fight, but G2 disengaging. Hundor going low. Sneaky knocked back. Solar Storm through 3. Sneaky dead. Esquire Winter Spires, but he will fall as well. Another double for Hundor. And as we pan to the Kraken taking the Vein Crystal, or to a war, whatever you want, it is going to be G2 finding game 2 here and taking the series. They will be the first finalists of week 2.
Yeah, G2 with a great performance. Again, Hundor, always this guy who's in a comfortable position to be that hyper carry. We've seen it on the Idris. We saw it come through on the Celeste. And this man really, showing that G2 is a team you have to take seriously this season.
Oh, for sure. G2 looking like they want to make a run to Singapore, be Europeans' world's hopes. And a fantastic series from them. Let's throw it back to Munch.
Thank you very much, guys. What a game coming out from G2. Game 1 of the series was exceptionally close between these two teams, but number 2, G2 weren't having any of it. A 17-minute victory for them, and honestly, making it look fairly easy coming into that one. Very strong performance.
Yeah, very strong performance from G2. A couple of questions that you have to throw towards the side of the Salty Potatoes, but G2 played this composition extremely well. Again, Hundor on the Celeste is just so strong and so dominant.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another impressive performance coming out of G2. They just outclassed Salty Potatoes today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring up, obviously, a few replays, but I want to question this Rhyme pick as well, because it felt to me like this Rhyme pick didn't really do what maybe they were wanting it to.
Yeah, no, it didn't. I mean, they wanted to pick it up so that they can play aggressive in the early game. They tried to do that for a little bit, but then didn't really keep it up. The Rhyme pick only makes sense if you're picking it to try and counter the Glaive and shut him down. If you don't do that, it doesn't really serve a huge purpose or any good purpose against the comp that G2 had.
Yeah, and I mean, in the early game, the Rhyme was able to do work in the jungle and was able to actually bully Glaive around, but then Glaive just said, okay, I'll just go up to the lane. While you're going to be in my backs, I'm just going to go up to the lane and start shutting down Sneaky and preventing him from being able to have this amazing BLACKFEATHER game that, he got the first blood with a great play in the lane, just wasn't able to really continue that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this first replay that we have is, I want to ask you guys if this is worth it, because we have a couple of the players from Salty Potatoes going in and kind of trading their lives for objectives. Is this kind of thing worth it this early on in the game?
If they had just made this trade for Esquire for the Crystal Sentry, yes. The problem becomes that during this, Cracks and Sneaky aren't just shoving the lane. If both of those two had stayed up in the lane, shoved the lane, taken that turret, then this is 100% worthwhile. But because it was delayed, Sneaky was like halfway rotated down, Cracks was fully rotated down. They take that turret, that's 200 gold for each member of the team, 600 gold total. But now they've lost 2 members, and they give up the gold mine, and all of a sudden that trade is no longer worthwhile because it's more gold going to the side of G2 instead.
Yeah, so it's only worth it if your opponent can't capitalize on those kills and turn it into even more objectives for themselves. So it definitely an interesting scenario, but one that G2 were able to take control of. And then as the game progressed, it felt like G2 just... They were getting to a point where there was no coming back for the opposing side. Like when you're playing a Celeste and you're ahead in golden experience, then you already know that you're in for a good time.
Yeah, for sure, especially if you're going up against Rhyme. I mean, you can see Rhyme trying to close the cap on Celeste there and kill her. That would have actually worked if BLACKFEATHER was on the same target, but in later game team fights, we saw that Salty Potatoes weren't really synergizing with their target focus. They were split when it comes to who they were focusing at times, and that was the biggest mistake that they did with their composition, since they just need to get on Celeste and kill her. That's their main objective. They just failed to do it.
Yeah, and in each of these fights that we saw, G2 was able to just roll these into more objectives, take more turrets, and start to look towards Kraken later on into the game. And then we saw G2 kind of pushing forward with Kraken, and that was the point where Salty Potatoes, kind of against the ropes, had to make something happen. But again, these fights never seem to quite go their way.
Yeah, and I think it's just almost too much on Sneaky's play, like too much on his shoulders to try and carry this game. Obviously, again, Rhyme not really having a whole lot of impact. Sneaky, attempting to go in deep, but just when you're the only one there, you're not going to be lasting very long. Even if you do have that counter pick in the BLACKFEATHER into the Celeste, he's still so far behind. He's a full tier 3 item behind, and counter pick or not, you're not going to be able to overcome that on your own.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation at that point to be able to fight through that kind of scenario. And honestly, this was it feels like an unfortunate game for Salty Potatoes, and a lot of it seems to pivot on the draft. Let's take a look at what happened to finish out this game as G2 looked to end things off.
And I mean, Salty Potatoes tried to hold off here, but at this point it's way too late. He can't kill both the Kraken, who's still at full health, and kill the enemy enemy team G2. So they tried to chase for the team fight, they tried to win it, they still ended up losing it, but it didn't really matter because the Kraken was already hammering on that Vein Crystal and would have finished the game on his own.
Yeah, and then you see Hundo just rush on through and just obliterate the rest of the base, and that is going to be the end of the series as well. So it's a 2-0 to G2 Esports, and I think after the performance on Celeste there, Hundo is going to grab himself the MVP, and also they're going to grab themselves a spot in the finals later on today. Hundo, I mean, we've talked about Hundo a lot, right? This guy, he seems to be just the linchpin of the G2 squad.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot because he's the key for this team a lot. They build these compositions for him to be this hyper carry. Even with the Glaive, Glaive can be a playmaker, but the way that they play it is more focused on getting Hundo ahead and allowing him to hard carry these games. The Glaive uses the afterburns to protect the Celeste a lot more than he does to try and engage onto the enemy team. So